Legal Aspects of Homeland Security, USA Patriot Act by Kachelhoffer. How much do you value your security? This presentation will discuss the creation of the USA Patriot Act, as well as the issues the citizens had with it and how these issues should be solved. After the attacks on September 11, 2001, there were a series of laws enacted to help ensure that another attack would not take place on U.S. soil. The most well-known law created through a presidential executive order is the USA Patriot Act. What is the USA Patriot Act? Perhaps the most well-known and controversial law enacted by the U.S. Congress in the aftermath of terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001 is the USA Patriot Act, against 2018. The bill was signed into law by President George W. Bush on October 26, 2001. The purpose of the bill was to give law enforcement officials greater power and authority in order to protect our country from future attacks. The act gives federal officials greater authority to track and intercept communications for both law enforcement and foreign intelligence gathering purposes. It vests the Secretary of the Treasury with the regulatory powers to combat corruption of U.S. financial institutions for foreign money laundering purposes. It seeks to further close our borders to foreign terrorists and to detain and remove those within our borders. It creates new crimes, new penalties, and new procedural efficiencies for use against domestic and international terrorists. Although it is not without safeguards, critics contend some of its provisions go too far. Although it grants many of the enhancements sought by the Department of Justice, others are concerned that it does not go far enough. What is the USA Patriot Act a problem? Why is the USA Patriot Act a problem? Many citizens believe that the USA Patriot Act violated their privacy, specifically their Fourth Amendment right of protection from illegal search and seizure. The Fourth Amendment requires law enforcement officers to obtain warrants before making most searches. To get a warrant, officers must make a sworn statement before a judge, particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The judge may only issue a search warrant if officers show probable cause that the person is engaged in criminal activity. Federal law requires that officers report to the court on the result of the search. The act violated their Fourth Amendment right by the use of sneak and peek warrants. Basically, sneak and peek warrants allow law enforcement to conduct a search without informing the suspect until later. Another thing they used is roving wiretaps. This allows law enforcement to follow a suspect through multiple telephone and internet accounts. Law enforcement could do this without having a named suspect or stating a specific thing that they would be monitoring, such as their phone or computer. Taps and trace searches. Basically, these are obtained transactional and addressing information attached to communication without having a probable cause warrant. Intelligence wiretaps allow searches without probable cause if a significant purpose is intelligence. The government circumvented the Constitution's probable cause requirement when its main goal is ordinary law enforcement. Many citizens feel as though they are not safe in America anymore because they believe that the government is always watching them or listening to them. More issues with the USA Patriot Act. The USA Patriot Act was a problem also because several citizens in the United States did not feel safer with the act, but they were more violated. Many believe the act gave the government permission to spy on the citizens with no probable cause. This led many to become more scared of the government and its power than they were of another attack like September 11th taking place on U.S. soil. According to the Pew Research Center, in 2006, the public divided evenly over the Patriot Act, with 39% saying that it was a necessary tool and 38% saying it was going too far. According to this poll done in 2006, there's almost an even divide in the United States on the approval of the USA Patriot Act. Almost half of Americans say that the act goes way too far. What has been proposed to solve this problem? Alright. The USA Freedom Act was signed into law by President Obama on June 2, 2005, which restored and modified several provisions of the USA Patriot Act. Chairman Bob Goodlatte stated, "The changes created by the USA Freedom Act are as follows." Basically, what it did was it ended bulk collection, prohibits bulk collection of all records under Section 215 of the Patriot Act, the FIFSA Pen Registry Authority, and National Security Letter statutes. Prevents government overreach. The bulk collection Prohibition is strengthened by prohibiting large-scale, indiscriminate collection as all records from an entire state, city, or zip code. Allows changes in national security letter gag orders. NSL non-disclosed orders must be based upon a danger to national security or inference with an investigation. Codifies procedures for individual companies to challenge non-disclosure orders. Requires periodic review of non-disclosure orders to determine necessity. Alright, so how would I personally solve this problem? In my opinion, the main issue with the USA Patriot Act is a public disconnect with the government's thought process, or just a simple misunderstanding of the government's goals. In order to solve these issues, we must educate the public on exactly what the act does, as how it is being used. We must explain that its purpose is to further protect the citizens of our country and for nothing else. We must explain how the government is not violating the rights of the people, but rather just taking appropriate precautions and steps to keep the people safe. There should be classes provided by local law enforcement on the rules of the USA Patriot Act as well as the Freedom Act in order to provide clarity to the citizens of what exactly the government is and not allowed to do. Some critiques of my plan could be, who will teach these classes? My answer to those people who would say that is classes will be taught by educated law enforcement professionals who will help outline all aspects of laws in a simple and easy format. Another critique could be, how will these classes benefit the public? My answer to that would be, these classes will help the public understand the laws and therefore help them feel more comfortable with them as well as safer because of them. And the last thing that they could critique me with is, how will the credibility of the teachers be checked? The teachers of the classes will be law enforcement professionals designated by the government to teach these classes. Each teacher would need to pass an examination on the law to make sure they understand it completely, and to pass a board held by peers and people highly regarded in the government in order to be able to teach the public these classes. To conclude, the USA Patriot Act was created in order to help the United States be safer and to prevent future attacks such as 9/11. The USA Patriot Act was renewed and edited by the Freedom Act due to the public dislike and unease. In order to solve the issue of public dislike and unease, we should educate the public on law by using law enforcement professionals in order to have the public feel safer and more open to the laws currently in place. The laws created under the USA Patriot Act as well as the revisions by the Freedom Act are extremely beneficial to our country in terms of security. With a little education, those critics of this issue will understand that these laws were not put in place for the government to have more power over the people, but instead created for the government and law enforcement agencies to further protect our country. And here are my references for my slideshow.